Good afternoon. Today we will take up the last unit, that is unit 14 of your management of machines and materials. Today we will basically talk about waste management. So what is waste? Waste is commonly defined as any action that does not add value to the customer. That means waste is such a item which does not give any value to the customer. Essentially, waste is any unnecessary step in the manufacturing process that does not benefit the customer. Therefore, the customer does not say say like to pay for it. Waste is a say product or a substance which is no longer say suited for its intended use. So before I go into waste management, I just want to highlight few minutes on waste. Waste is commonly defined any action in an organization or in your household or in any say service center. It is can be anywhere, not necessarily in a factory or not necessarily in a production unit. Waste say commonly defined as an action that does not add value. So any action that doesn't add value to the customer, essentially waste is an unnecessary step. If you talk about manufacturing process, there are many steps, and waste represents the unnecessary step in a manufacturing process that does not benefit the customer. Therefore, the customer does not want to pay for it. And waste is a product or a substance which is no longer suited for its intended use. So, after talking to waste management about waste, it is very necessary to have a waste management because every organization wants to reduce the waste in order to reduce your say cost of production. So waste management is a multidisciplinary activity. That means it is not a single activity but is multidisciplinary activity involving different departments, engineering principles, economic principles, urban and regional planning, management techniques, also social sciences to minimize the overall wastivity of the system under consideration. A systematic approach to the waste management consists of the waste of all kind of say resources at all stages should be adopted. However, as the material constitute a major fraction of its total product cost, material wasted are a critical importance. Yes. So just to highlight what is waste management, again I will brief up this slide. Waste management is a multidisciplinary activity involving different principles, engineering principles, economic principles, and it also needs urban and regional planning. It also takes into account management techniques. It also takes into social science so as to reduce the waste of the system under consideration. A system approach to waste management consists of the waste of all kind of resources at all stages should be adopted. That a system approach to waste management, what is that? It consists of waste of all kinds of resources. It's starting from the raw material to the finished product to the work in progress at all stages should be adopted. However, in any say manufacturing organization, materials happens to be the major portion of the total production cost. So if materials are wasted, it will be a huge loss to the organizations. So it is the paramount importance for the organization to have as minimum as possible the waste materials. A system basically takes some input, process, and gives the desired output. And some input is essential in whatever form for the functioning of a system. A Ideal system is conceptualized to transform the total input into the useful or desirable output. In view of the physical law of nature, the existence of ideal system is not possible. 100% utilization of resources is practically not possible for any system. To paraphrase, some waste is inevitable in the functioning of a system. This slide highlights that in spite of all our efforts, in spite of all our efforts, in spite of all our say uh, say resources, try with, in spite of all our say efforts, we can say it is very say it's not very possible to say fully utilize our resources 100%. So as I talk about, a system consists of certain inputs and processes it and gives the finished product. Some input is essential in whatever form for the functioning of the system. So a ideal system is called that system which say transform all the input into useful desired output. But this is not always possible. Therefore, 100% utilization of resources is not practical possible for any system. So, to say that some waste is inevitable, that is, it is must in the functioning of any system. So, waste we cannot avoid. We, in spite of all our try, in spite of all our, because of the physical law, because of the physical law of nature, waste is bound to occur. So, the main objective of work waste management is to minimize the waste, thus aiming at the ideal system, while resource management aims to maximize the utilization of resources. The goal of waste and the resource management is same, that is optimal utilization of the available resources for higher efficiency and growth of the system, but the approaches are different. So, if you talk about the objective of say waste management, it is nothing but to reduce the waste, thus aiming at ideal system. What is an ideal system? I told you in the previous slide. An ideal system is that system which converts the input into output in a optimum level. But while the resource management aims to maximize the utilization of the resources, and there is a waste management as well as along with there is a resource management. And what is the objective of resource management? Resource management aims to maximize the utilization of the available resources. That means you should use the resources to the fullest possible. There should be minimum loss. The goal of waste and resource management is the same. That is optimal utilization of the available resources for higher efficiency and growth of the system, but the approaches are the different. So, as to talk about the objective of work management, the waste management, it minimizes the production of waste. Say proper management practices. If you have a proper management practices that can help to minimize the garbage scraps that need handling, reducing, recycling and reusing as much as possible can reduce the disposable cost. So to talk about the main objective of waste management, it is the first one is to minimize the production of waste. And how to do it? By reducing the waste, recycling it, reusing. Then second objective is reduce the pollution effects. Third is protect groundwater resources. Say properly, say handle waste can end up in rivers, oceans and other water resources, polluting the water and contaminating the soil below it. Marine and animals become endangered. Third is ensure sustainability to protect our environment from pollution and contaminations and repair and reduce the damage caused by pollution. The fourth objective may be irresponsibility. Disposal of waste can lead to various diseases, can harm people. Say having proper waste disposable methods available support recycling and saves precious materials. With the help of biomediation, it is say removing contaminants, pollutants, toxins from soil, water, and other environment. So, the in today's world, say in a global world, waste management has become very important, and waste management has various objectives. One of the objective is minimize the by proper waste management we can minimize the production of waste. You can say reduce the pollution effects, we can protect our rivers, we can protect the soil below the river, and we can also protect the marine animals in this. We can also protect our say environment from pollutions. We can also say save our people from different diseases. You can save from various diseases, or also we can have say prop methods recycle. We can also by waste management we can lead to recycling and saves precious materials. And by biomediation it is say removing contamination, pollutants and toxins from soil, water and other environment. So let's discuss what is the taxonomy of waste. Lack of coordinated work in the field of waste management has given rise to multiplicity of terms and definition of various types of waste. The need for standardization of the nomenclature has been felt for systematic research and effective implementation of waste management programs. Waste can be classified in a varieties of ways depending on the purpose for which the classification is done. So, if you go through the history or the say literature of waste, there is lack of coordinated work in the field of waste management. So there is no coordinated or there is no say consensus about what you mean by waste. So this problem has given to multiplicity of terms and definition of various types of waste. So now there is a need for standardization of the nomenclature has been felt by systematic research and effective implementation of say waste management program. Say as such, waste can be classified on a varieties of ways depending upon the purpose for which classification is done. So we have different purpose. On the basis of the purpose, waste can be classified, and there are four basic classifications. What are those? On the basis of source of origin, that means from where this waste has originated, on that basis we can classify the agricultural management. The source of origin may serve as an efficient and practical way of from agricultural management, from industrial, from municipality, residential or domestic, commercial, construction and demolition, etc. So anything which has originated from agriculture practices or agriculture processing. So sugarcane, if you are doing sugarcane processing industry, or you have say paddy, rice, there are certain waste. Industrial productions, say there is chimney, there is fire, there is pollutants comes from the industrial. Municipality there is garbage. Residential and domestic, in everyday life you have certain waste. That is also commercial, any commercial organizations, say hospitals, say schools, colleges, isn't it? Then your malls, these are all commercial organizations where a lot of people visits and lot of interactions takes place. And here restaurants, commercial organization, restaurant is a, so here we find there are different types of say waste originate. And when there are construction work and sometimes demolition also occur, municipality does the demolition or government does some demolitions. If an unauthorized construction, sometimes there is a of the existing building or if you want to make a say better building, better structure on the existing structure, you have to dem so demolish work, and in that place you have to construct a new building. So all these activities have a source for have a source for waste. Now, on the basis of property, the classification is meant for material waste only, depending upon the property that affect the environment. Say, waste may be two types, hazardous and non-hazardous. What is hazardous? That waste which harm the mankind, which harm the river, which harm the water, which contaminates different diseases, which spread different diseases, which gives some skin problem. This is called hazardous. Non-hazardous, which may not be harmful, which is not may not be harmful, but it is non-hazardous means it is may not be harmful to the human society or to the society in large, but hazardous one it is harmful. On the basis of recoverability, as per the characteristic of resource, the waste must be recoverable. The waste that can be converted into some useful resource, material waste, energy waste, reused in other processes. That means waste which can be recycled and can be converted into some useful resource. It is called recoverable waste. And some examples of recoverable waste is material waste, energy waste. If there is energy waste, that can be reused in other processes. Non-recoverable, this includes the resources that are lost with time and cannot be regained afterwards. Manpower, energy capacity, services, etc. These are all non-recoverable. So, on the basis of recoverability, there are two types of waste. Recoverable waste, that means that can be converted into some useful resources, or non-coverable, which the resources that are lost with time and cannot be regained afterwards. Most of the productivity measure at the present compare the total output to the individual inputs, that is material, energy, manpower, capital, etc. While they usually fail to directly compare the fraction of a particular input that goes into output. Further, it is difficult to measure the output of various individual inputs invested in various finished product, whereas it is comparatively easier to assess the waste of the various inputs. Hence, a new concept of wastivity has been propounded that can serve as an adequate measure of performance of a system. It is rather easy to measure. So, most of the productivity measures, when you measure productivity, it is output divided by input, individual inputs. So, in a production of a particular output or a commodity, lot of inputs are used: materials, energy, manpower, capital. So, we cannot, so in this productivity comparison, we cannot say directly compare the fraction of a particular. That means what is the if there are four inputs are used, what is the fraction of material has gone to produce the output, or what is the energy has contributed, or how much manpower has contributed? Is very difficult to. Further, it is difficult to measure the output of various individual inputs invested in various finished product. But it is, if you compare with say waste, whereas it is comparatively easy to assess the waste of various input, but how much inputs has been gone for waste, and the concept of wastivity has been propounded that can serve as an adequate. So wastivity is a measure of performance of any system, and it is measure of the performance of any system and is rather easy to measure. Now, wastivity of any system is defined as ratio of waste to input. Wastivity is waste divided by input. Depending on the level of waste under consideration, the wastivity may be categorized as gross wastivity and net. Gross wastivity is defined as the ratio of total waste generated by a particular system to the total input to that system. So, how do you define or how do you calculate wastivity of a system? Wastivity is calculated waste divided by input. So, what is the materials, how much materials you have used, and out of that materials, how much materials have been wasted? That by waste divided by input gives you up the wastivity measure. Now, depending on the level of waste under consideration, so wastivity can be further classified into two categories. What is that? Gross wastivity and net wastivity. What is gross? Gross is the ratio of total waste divided by a particular waste generated by a particular total input. That means whatever input that will be used. Suppose in previous example, I told you manpower, energy, materials combinedly together. This gives you the total input. So total waste divided by total input gives you the gross wastivity. However, the fraction of total waste generated is intermediate to the system and get recycled. The net waste to be disposed of or reused in the other system is less than the gross waste generated. So net waste is total waste minus the generated waste recycled within the system. The ratio of net waste to the disposed of the total input to the system is termed as net wastivity. Say the net wastivity will be dependent on the extent of recycling. So what it says here, out of the total waste generated in a system, it is intermediate. Why it is called intermediate? Because of the total waste, some of the input waste are recycled. Some of the gets recycled and disposed of or reused in other system. So when you compare net waste to the gross waste, net waste is always be less than the total waste. So how do you calculate the net waste? Whatever total waste we have, there are 100 total waste minus generated waste recycled. Within that 20 has been recycled within the system or in some other system. So ratio of net waste to be disposed of the total input to the system is termed. So net waste to be disposed or net waste to be recycled divided by the total input to the system is termed as the net wastivity. The net wastivity will depend on the extent of recycling. So if more will be recycled, the net wastivity will be say less. Wastivity is a performance measure. An ideal or a perfect system will be one that consumes just the right amount of resources, leaving no idle, unutilized, or lost resources or any undesirable output. The presently known laws of nature obviate the existence of any such ideal system, indicating that the occurrence of waste is inevitable. The concept of wastivity, which is yet in the rudimentary stage, may prove to be a good measure of performance, both at the macro and micro level, and will be helpful in the sound planning and monitoring of various systems at different levels of hierarchy. So, what is the work of function of wastivity? The major function of wastivity is performance measure. As I told you earlier, any ideal or perfect system is one which makes use of the right amount of resources, neither more nor less, leaving no idle, leaving no unutilized or lost resources or any undesirable output. The presently, as I know, the presently known laws of nature obviate the existence of ideal system. Because of the physical laws, we cannot guarantee that there will be an ideal system or perfect system. So occurrence of waste is must or inevitable. The concept of wastivity, which is at in the rudiment, is in the fundamental rudimentary stage, but it may be a good measure of the performance. How the organization is performing, whether it is generating more waste or it is using the resources to the full extent, and wastivity can give a good measure of it, both at the macro level, at the top at the national level or at the micro level, at the factory level, or at the and will be helpful in the sound planning and monitoring of various systems at different levels of hierarchy. So Vestivity has a great utility to the any say production system. All production system wants to have a ideal system or a perfect system, but sometimes because of the law of nature, it is not possible to say achieve say full use of all the resources. Say waste is a must. Waste is a must. So Vestivity is a performance measurements, how the organization is working both at the macro level as well as micro level. Yes. Vestivity and productivity waste can indirectly serve as a good measure of productivity. Productivity of any system is defined as the ratio of desired output to input. Most of the productivity measures at the present compare the total output to the individual inputs, labor, material, energy, while they usually fail to directly compare the, the fraction of a particular input that goes into the output. So, waste can indirectly serve as a good measure of productivity. So, wastivity and productivity are related to each other in what way? Now, productivity of any system has been defined as the ratio of, that means output divided by input gives you the productivity. Yes, most of the productivity measures at the present compare the total output to the individual, but as I already told you, productivity fails to tell you directly compare the fraction of a particular input that goes. So, in this example, labor, material, energy, capital, there are four inputs are there, but productivity fails to tell you how much labor has contributed to the productivity, how much material has contributed to the that goes into the output. Now, let LR be the vestivity index for earth resources, WR, these are the examples. So, the problem associated with the management of waste in today's society are complex and diverse in nature. For an effective and orderly management of waste, the fundamental aspects and relationship must be identified and clearly understood. The efficient waste management comprises of quick identification of waste generated, economic reduction, efficient collection and handling, optimal reuse and recycling, effective disposal of waste, leaving no environmental problems. Waste management can thus be functionally classified into five basic elements: generations, reduction, collection, recycling, and disposable. However, waste management should be viewed in totality, considering the interrelationship of basic functional elements and system. So, the problem associated with the management of waste is very complex and diverse in nature. It's not single problem, it is very diverse. For an effective and orderly management of waste, the fundamental aspects and relationship must be identified. So, if you want to say have an orderly and effective management, you must identify the fundamental aspect and relationship. The efficient waste management consists of quick identification of the waste generated. We should immediately identify what are the waste and what are the cause of the waste. What is the economic reduction? How much? Then efficient collection. You should collect the waste efficiently and handle it, dispose it. Optimal reuse. That means it can be recycled and reused either in the system or in any other system. Then effective disposal of waste, leaving no environmental problem. So, five things, it very important. Waste generated, we must identify the waste generated or cause, economic reduction, what are the say cost to the organization, efficient collection and handling of the waste, Optimal reuse, we should, as far as possible, we should reuse and recycle it. Effective disposal of the waste, you should try to dispose in such a manner it will not be harmful to the human mankind. Thus, waste management will be functionally classified into five: generation, reduction, collection, recycling, and disposable. So, waste management should be viewed in totality, considering the interrelationship. So, it should not be, say, viewed in isolation, it should be viewed in the totality, the interrelationship of basic functional elements. Yes. Identify the fundamental aspects and relationship involved in each element. Develop, wherever possible, quantifiable relationship for the purpose of making engineering comparison, analysis, and evaluations. So, first is identify the fundamental aspects and relation involved in each element or work, and develop, wherever possible, quantifiable relationship between the elements and for the purpose of engineering comparisons or analysis or evaluation. Generation of waste. There may be numerous causes responsible for the first thing. We have discussed for five things: generation, reduction, collection, recycling, and disposable. We are coming to generation of waste. There may be numerous causes responsible for the generation of waste in different systems. So, when you talk about how the waste is generated, you cannot single out single cause. There are numerous causes. However, some general causes of waste generation in different stages have been perceived. The checklist of causes of the waste is shown, out of which some causes may be critical. If it is possible to account for the amount of waste generated against respective causes, then most critical causes will be one that contribute to the highest aggregate cost of the waste. Yes. When you talk about generation of waste, I am again highlighting there is not a single or cause which is responsible for generation of waste in. Some of the general causes of waste has been perceived by the company. The company say that these are the some general causes. We will show you in the next slide. But if it is possible, suppose there are 10 causes we have identified. If it is possible for the amount of waste generated against respective, so what percentage of waste is generated out of a respective cause, then most critical, if the most critical cost will be one that contributes the highest aggregate cost of the waste. If the cost is 100 rupees, aggregate cost of waste is 100 rupees. So there is 5 causes. So A, B, C, D, E. Suppose the C causes has contributed to 40% of the total cost. Then I can say that C is the most critical cost and special, say, treatment should be required for that particular cause. So, generation of waste is not, say, there is not a single cause. Again, I am saying there is no single cause. Causes may be, general causes may be perceived by the organizations, and if from the different causes identified, if you can find out the critical cause, that will give a lot of benefit to the organization. Now, what are the table ineffective policies? What is the ineffective policies? The policies of, say, waste disposable. Suppose you don't have a, say, dockyard where you can keep your waste. Ineffective policies of the organizations. Lack of planning. When you start your business, when you start off your factory, you did not plan beforehand. That's why the problem has started. Lack of planning. Political pressures. Suppose due to political pressures, you have installed a outdated machines, or you have purchased the outdated machines which is creating lot of defective organizational structure. Sometimes organizational defective organizational structure also gives rise to waste. More emphasis on subsystem objectives rather than organizational goal. And sixth one is poor management and faulty systems and procedures. So these causes are general causes which are perceived. And if possible, in out of these seven causes, if we can identify the most critical cause, then we can handle that cause. Yes. Then personal interest. Due to personal interest of something, I take certain decisions that may also give rise to, say, a generation. Carelessness and negligence of the lack of individual responsibility. I don't take responsibility. Non-acquaintance with the latest technological development. Resistance to adopt automation and computerization. Wrongly laid out design standards. Lack of standardization and codifications. These are the list. Personal interest. Sometimes personal interest also gives rise to, say, carelessness. You become careless, neglect. So you are not able to use the resources properly. There is bound to be waste. Lack of individual responsibility. You don't become responsible. You, say, perform in a irresponsible way. You are not, say, familiar with the latest technology. You are not familiar with the latest technological development. Therefore, you are not able to handle the machinery in a proper way. So there will be bound to be waste. Resistant to adopt automation. That means you are comfortable with the existing system, though the system is giving you waste, generating waste, but you are comfortable. And if the organization is insisting on automation and computerization, then you are, say, resisting it. You are not, say, open to adopt that automation or computerization. Sometimes wrongly laid design standards also gives rise to waste and lack of standardization and codifications. Wrong choice of raw materials. If the raw materials are wrong, then it also leads to, say, ignorance of inventory control. So how much you will, say, you should have acquaintance with EOQ model, or you should understand that inventory control model, ABC model, XYZ model, different models are there. If a inventory manager is not aware of this inappropriate storage facility, sometimes there may be pilferage, there may be theft, there may be, say, from natural calamity. We should protect all the, say, materials from the natural calamities. So natural calamities, poor handling of materials. Sometimes materials are not properly handled. Poor layout of the facilities. Sometimes facilities are not properly laid out. Information delay. So if you don't get the information in time, yes, improper work methods, less emphasis on production planning and control. That means the scheduling, the dispatching, the routing, less emphasis on PPC control, inadequate supervision and control, improper equipment and lack of training, lack of motivation and incentives, unhygienic work environment, insufficient skill and use of unsafe practices. All these are the poor labor relations, frequent power failures, poor maintenance, less emphasis on quality control, poor distribution network, less emphasis on collection and segregation of waste, technological obsolescence, miscellaneous causes. Yes. So there are 35 general causes which are can be conceived, or starting from, say, inefficient policies to miscellaneous causes. So accurate information on waste generation rates and composition provides a basis for design and operation of various waste control programs, recycling and processing plant, waste disposable projects, and the choice of most effective disposable alternative. The problems in obtaining the information on this aspect are complex and involve the following factors. So, when the waste is generated, we must get accurate information on the waste generation rate, how much waste is generated at what rate, and composition provides, and what are the composition of the waste, how much is solid, how much is liquid, how much are in gaseous natures. So that gives you a basis for design and operation of various waste control. Our waste control programs, recycling program, processing plant, waste disposable projects, and choice of most effective disposable alternatives are based on our accurate information on waste generation and its composition. So the problem in obtaining the information in this project are complex. So it is easy to say, but in reality, the problems in obtaining the information on this aspect are complex and involve the following factors. Various establishments may differ widely in their waste generating practices. Say, most firms are electing to reveal the production and related statistics for fear of data being used to the competitive advantage of others. So, why the firms are electing to reveal the production and related statistics? Because that may go to the competitor's hand and they may take the advantage of the. Generally, the firms are electing to provide information on quantity and composition of waste for fear of it indicating non-compliance with pollution control program. Yes. The quantum of waste generated reflects the inefficiency of the organization. If the more waste is generated, then it says that the organization is inefficient. Some industrial activities are subject to seasonal variations. The extent of salvaging, recycling, and other reclamation of waste differ greatly among manufacturers. Many firms themselves have little understanding and few records on this aspect. So, the problem in getting the information are many. So, why firms are reluctant to provide production and related statistics? Because it may be used by the competitors. So, information on quantity and because is non-compliance in pollution control regulations. So, if firms are reluctant to provide correct information because it may be drag you into the court of law. And sometimes if you say the exact quantum of your waste, it says your efficiency also, inefficiency of the organization. Some industrial activity are subject to seasonal variations. So in some season there may be more waste, in some season the extent of salvaging, that means scrapping, recycling and other reclamation differ greatly among manufacturers. So informations, data vary from organization. Many firms themselves have little understanding and few records on this aspect. A systematic approach to waste reduction. A systematic minimize the total system waste, minimizing the waste at the individual stages in conjunction with other stages has been proposed. So, what is a systematic approach of reduction? A systematic approach to minimize the total system waste. That is, minimizing the waste at the individual stage. Suppose, I will give you an example. In a production process, there are different stages. First from the store, first from the, say, from the vendor, the material comes. We will try to see that when the material reaches from the vendors to our plant, we should say there will be less or minimum waste there. From the store to the work floor, we should say the proper handling. That should not be wasted. Then after the processing, during the processing, we should see that the resources are used at the, so all individual, finally when the final products comes, we should take say proper care of say protecting the final products. So, a systematic approach of minimizing the total system is to reduce the waste at the individual levels. It provides scientific and systematic method of waste reduction at individual stages and finally for the whole system. The procedure for approaching from whole to part and then from part to whole is proposed. The basic steps of the approach are as follows. Recognize the waste for the whole system. So, identify the stages at which waste is caused and generated. Visualize the whole system into fraction caused at various stages as identified in step 2. Apply the systematic waste reduction procedure at each stage separately. Recognize the waste, identify the cause, plan the corrective actions, eliminate the cause. Find the correct correlation of various stages to assess the effect on waste generation at one stage due to waste reduction in other stages. If there is no such correlation, then establish control separately at each stage to prevent recurrence of the cause of the waste generation. If such correlation exists and waste is caused, then find the stages affected. So, a systematic approach is from whole to part and part to whole is proposed, and there are different stages. First step is recognize the waste of the whole system. Suppose I am producing, say, cotton. So from the, say, cloth, I am producing cloth from the raw material stage to the final product. Recognize the waste of the whole system. After identifying the waste for the whole system, I have to identify the waste at the stages at which, identify the stage at which waste is caused or generated. How do you then, second is visualize the whole system into fraction. As I give you an example, from the vendor to the store, from the store to the shop floor, from the shop floor to the machines, machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, then final product. These are the stages. We have to visualize the whole waste into fraction and cause at various stages as identified in step 2. Identify the stage. So we have identified the stages as stage 2. Then we will, what you do? We will visualize the whole system into fractions as cause at various stages and apply the systematic waste reduction procedure at each stage separately. So how do you reduce the waste? Not whole. You have to reduce the reduction procedure at each stage separately. Recognize the waste at each stage, identify its cause, plan the corrective actions, and eliminate the cause. Then fifth is, we have to find out the various stages to affect the effect on waste generation one stage due to waste reduction at other stages. So we have to find the correlations. We have to see if there is any relationship between the, say, waste generation one stage due to waste reduction at other stages. If there is no such, then establish control separately to prevent the reoccurrence of the cause of the waste generation. If such correlation exists, waste is caused, then find the stages affected. To obtain a break-even of waste at related stages, to minimize the total aggregate waste at all stages. The seventh one is establish control to prevent recurrence of the cause of the waste generation. Waste management system for individual organizations, sectors as well as the whole economy should be designed to fulfill the goal of zero waste. Zero waste should not be misinterpreted as if no waste is generated. Such an interpretation will neither be feasible nor justified, as some waste is inevitable within the function of a system. A 100% efficient system is only hypothetical in nature. Further, such a system will be closed and will have zero growth rate, which is not desirable. The main theme of philosophy of zero waste is First of all, try to minimize the waste generated as far as it be technologically and economically feasible. And whatever little waste is generated should be put to some effective use. The goal of zero waste, yes. To obtain the break-even of waste at related stages, we have to minimize the total aggregate waste at all stages and establish control to prevent reoccurrence of the cause of. So we should have proper control at each stage so that further the waste cannot be generated. The waste management system for individual organizations as well as whole economy should be designed to fulfill the goal of zero waste. And zero waste should not be misinterpreted as no waste. Such an interpretation is not possible in any system. Some waste is inevitable and 100% is hypothetical. So main theme of the philosophy is to first of all try to minimize the waste generated as far as possible, technologically and economically feasible, and whatever little waste is generated should be put to some effective use. So the goal of zero waste is to minimize the waste generated as far as possible by some technical or by some economical physical feasible manner, and if some little waste is generated it should be recycled or it should be reused. So the goal of zero should be waste collection system has a significant effect on subsequent functional element, public health, aesthetics, housekeeping, public attitude concerning the operation of the system. As collection and transportation constitute a major cost in waste treatment, up to 80% of streamlining of collection techniques can greatly improve the efficiency and effect a significant saving in the overall cost of waste management. This will be beneficial in two ways: reduce disposal efforts and advantages of resource recovery by effective. So the proposed strategy for waste collection are: number one, design of economic basis to facilitate separation at source, to provide every organization with a set of 4 standard bins to separately collect the metallic, plastic, paper and other miscellaneous waste. The bins should be designed after careful investigation of the types and quantum of waste generated. Design of appropriate collection system governed by the public or private agencies to regularly collect the segregated waste at time intervals depending upon the generation rate. Incentives to encourage segregation of the waste at the source. Timely collection of the scrapped organizations, appliances along with segregated waste and its flow through salvage industry for ultimate reuse. Development and of appropriate collection system for the collection of miscellaneous organic and inorganic waste. So, there is a proposed strategy for waste collection. We should have a design of an economic basis for facility separations at source. And every organization should provide 4 standard bins to separately collect the metallic, plastic and other, and bins should be design of appropriate collection system governed by the public and private agency. Now, in different municipalities, they are coming in a vehicle and collecting the say waste from the domestic places or from the commercial places early in the morning, and they advise them not to throw the or not to dispose on the roads or in some places. So there should be design of an appropriate collection system. Municipality of different states like in Orissa or Andhra Pradesh, what they do, they have a vehicle which comes with a say music, and they make the people aware that if you dispose of the waste outside, what is the harm. So there should be incentives for segregation of waste at the source. If you can, anybody who is segregating the waste at the source, he should be given some financial, then timely collection of the scrapped organizations and development of appropriate collection system. Say recycling of waste in the absence of conservations of recycling, certain of the world's finite resources will diminish to a level of incapable of maintaining an acceptable environment and adequate life support. Fortunately, India, there is growing awareness to recycle, reuse the waste. The National Committee on Science and Technology has identified number of recycling projects. The term recycling, reuse, reclamation, recovery have different interpretations, though these terms are generally used as synonymous. In this study, the term recycling is adopted to mean all these terms. Recycling generally refers to use of undesirable output or waste as input to the same process or system or recycling of foundry scrap. Reuse may be termed as the use of waste generated from one process or system as input to some other process system as a raw material or for the generation of the power or product. So recycling is very important. Recycling in the absence of conservations or recycling certain world's finite resources, because in this world the resources are finite. One day it will say we say may not be available for the human use. So it will diminish to a level incapable of maintaining an acceptable environment and adequate lifestyle. So there is a growing awareness for recycle and reuse. So there are different terms which can be used: recycling, reuse, reclamations, but there are different. Recycling generally refers to use of undesirable outputs or waste as input to the same process or system. Reuse may be use of the waste generated from one system, which can be say used in one system, which can be which can be used in other system or other process as the raw materials. So to conclude with my say topic today, let me say that say methods of waste disposal has a different say importance to the organizations. Say garbage accumulation has never been much of a concern in the past, but due to globalizations and industrialization, there is a need for more efficient waste disposal method. And in the process, the waste that cannot be reused or recycled are separated out and spread as a thin layer in the low-lying areas across a city, and a layer of soil is added to each after layer. A layer of soil is added after each layer of garbage. Once this is process is complete, the area is unfit for construction of building for next 20 years. So landfill is another say program by which we can say control the waste. In incineration is the process of say controlled combustion of garbage to reduce it to incombustible manner such as ash and waste gas. The exhaust gases from the process may be toxic, hence it is treated before being released into the environment. So incineration is another method by which we can control. Then waste composition, the waste material should be plastic bottles are compacted into blocks and biogas generation. These are all the recent techniques which the governments are using for waste disposal. And to conclude my say lecture today, a organization can prosper, an organization can be more beneficial or productivity and its profit will increase if you can reduce the say waste the minimum possible. Thank you very much.